Last season, the OKC Thunder went 44-28, getting them the 5th seed where they lost in the first round to the Houston Rockets. From their players returning from last season, their top performer is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and their more interesting players are Luguentz Dort and Darius Bazley. After an average rookie year on the Clippers and the trade to OKC, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander really came onto the scene. Especially in a role with higher usage, his numbers really improved. He's a crafty scoring guard. He's not really an explosive athlete that's going to overwhelm you with speed or an insane vertical, but he gets to the rim in very crafty ways. He has great footwork. He can change his pace a lot to get the defense off guard. He's really crafty with his finishes, side steps, euro steps, hop steps, you name it. He gets to the rim a lot. 28.6% of his field goal attempts come from 0 to 3 feet. And he is really adept at using floaters, or it's a shot that he really goes to a lot. 26.3% of his field goal attempts come from 3 to 10 feet, which is the floater range. And he shoots that at a 40.4% clip. Not the best percentage in the world, but definitely better than a lot of people. And he does find a way to get to the free throw line quite a bit. He averages 5.1 free throws per game. Shai is also a great mid-range scorer. 13.6% of his attempts come from 10 to 16 feet, where he shoots 50% from the field, and from 16 feet to the three-point line, he shoots 50.7% from the field, one of the best mid-range efficiencies in the entire NBA. He shoots a solid three-point percentage, but it is on a low clip, though most of his three-point attempts are off of tougher types of three-point shots. Only 54% of his three-point makes were assisted on last season. In terms of his playmaking, he's average at that. The questions around Shai were whether or not he could play point guard or shooting guard, what was his natural position. Those questions arose because he's not really the most natural passer. And going into next season with this much less talented Oklahoma City bunch, he's going to have to improve his playmaking quite a bit without playing with CP3 like he did last season. On defense, it is a bit of a mixed bag. Because of his length, he's 6'5", and he has a great wingspan, so that allows him to be quite disruptive on the defensive end. He averaged 1.6 steals per 100 and 0.9 blocks per 100, which is pretty impressive for a shooting guard. And he's also a great rebounding guard, again, because of his length and wingspan. But on the ball, he has some question marks due to his slight frame. I don't think he is above 190 pounds, and that's pretty slim for being 6'5". And he doesn't have the quickest feet, like I said, on offense, and that also translates to his lack of elite level lateral quickness on defense. And then a lot of his defensive miscues came from just being a young player in the league. So given his size and length, I think he should get better on that end with experience. Now, Luguentz Dort, I'm going to put his numbers up from the playoffs because he got a lot more usage during the playoffs than he did in the regular season. Lu Dort's a high-level perimeter defender. He's 6'3", 220 pounds, kind of in the Marcus Smart type of build, just in terms of body type. And he's got an extremely high motor, and he really competes on the defensive end. You always see him putting in 100% effort on the defensive side of the ball. He's relentless. He guarded Harden most of the time in the playoffs, and he did a pretty decent job. So Dort's a high-level perimeter defender. He's still young. He can emerge into one of the best perimeter defenders in the league one day. On offense, though, he's not much of a creator. He's a good athlete, so he can get to the rim and finish at a decent level. But in terms of just a jump shot, it needs a lot of work. The Rockets comfortably lived and died by him taking open threes. So much so that he was attempting 8.3 three-pointers per game. And for somebody not being a great three-point shooter, that is an insane amount of threes to be taking. Luguentz Dort's type of playstyle kind of reminds me of another perimeter defending clamp god that couldn't shoot in OKC, who's also dating the baddest girl in 2K history. But at least Dort is confident in his shot and he's willing to take threes. And that was kind of something that Roberson shied away from. It took a lot to really convince him to shoot threes. He would have to be wide open before he would even think about taking it. At least for Dort, he's putting them up without much hesitation. So yeah, there is some belief that he can improve there because of his confidence. It's more than Andre Roberson, but then you look at the free throw numbers, that kind of makes you want to backtrack on that confidence that he will improve because he shot such a poor percentage. But he's still only 20 years old, and that was his rookie year last year. I'm sure the Oklahoma City staff will try and commit time to his development. Darius Bazley came into the league with potential as an athletic floor spacing four. I don't think he went to college. I think he's an IMG Academy dude. I may be wrong though. He didn't get much time on OKC last year, so I didn't see him play much, but I know he has great bounce. He's pretty confident as a shooter. He can handle the ball a bit and get to the rim off of his own handle, and that's all I really know. I'll see more of him with more playing time this season if ESPN and TNT want to put Oklahoma City on national TV games. Okay, in the offseason, OKC's transactions were loaded. I'm not going to go through every one of them. Coming into the team is Al Horford, Ty Jerome, Trevor Ariza, and a bunch of first round picks and some second round picks as well. And going out of the team is obviously the veterans, Steven Adams, Dennis Schroeder, and Chris Paul. So they were just doing a lot of flipping assets throughout the offseason, so I'm not going to detail every transaction, but basically Oklahoma City is fully embracing their rebuild. They started in the offseason liquidating all their assets for more and more first round picks. And yeah, they got a lot of them. In the draft, they took two main prospects, Alexej Pokusevski, try saying that 5 times fast. They took him at 17, and they took Theo Maledon at 34 in a pick that I believe they got in some trade. Alexej is a guy who has demigod potential. He's a 7-footer who can handle the ball confidently, bring the ball up the court. He can run the open floor with the ball in his hands. He has some counter moves to counter the defense when they make a reach for the ball. He's a pretty good shooter. When you just watch him on the court, he moves like a small forward, and you kind of forget that he's a 7-foot-tall player. So he moves really well for his size. He looked pretty good in the preseason. So we'll see what kind of impact he can have on a pretty depleted OKC team that's probably going to give him a lot of minutes because they don't have a lot of other players that I really see them playing over Poku. Theo Maledon, I don't know much about him. I've heard his name for a couple of years now. He's going to be a raw prospect, really a project player, and I've heard some comps to him of Frank Ntilikina, so take that for what you will. And then in terms of signings, none are really too significant. Basically everyone on this team is new, so I'm not going to detail whatever free agency signings or re-signings happened. Taking a look at the depth chart, in the guard positions they have SGA, George Hill, who I forgot to mention was also traded to OKC in one of their many 3-team trades. But they have SGA, George Hill, Hamidou Diallo, and Frank Jackson. Actually, no, they don't have Frank Jackson. They just released him. At the forward positions, they have Lou Dort, 6'3" dude playing small forward. That's just goes to show you his defensive impact. Darius Bazley, Alexej, Justin Jackson, and Trevor Ariza. And at the center positions, they have Al Horford and Mike Muscala. Coaching them is Mark Daigneault. I'm gonna say, I probably got it wrong, but he's only 35 years old. I just found out. He was the head coach of their G League team last year, or a couple years ago. He was Oklahoma's assistant last year, and now he's their head coach. Next season, the starting lineup should be George Hill, SGA, Lou Dort, Darius Bazley, and Al Horford. I estimate their record to be 15-57, and I think they're going to be the worst team in the West. They're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Obviously, they're going to miss the playoffs. There's just not a lot of veteran talent on this team. No win-now talent on this team, really. That's cohesive or enough to really compete for a playoff spot. And that's fine because OKC is rebuilding. Sam Presti's made it clear that they're rebuilding around their young talent Shea and trying to get as many first-round picks for the future so that maybe they can hit on 1 or 2 or 3 of them. And they can be a part of the rebuild to be the core of the team going forward. Or maybe your young players on the team now, so maybe some of them can be a part of the rebuild going forward. So yeah, Sam Presti blew it up. He traded all of their valuable vets for first and second round picks. It's a clean slate in OKC, and they're building around SGA. They're probably going to have a top 5 pick in the loaded 2021 class that features Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Kuminga, Evan Mobley, just to name a few. Though the Thunder will be the worst team in the Western Conference this year, their future is bright. They have a young, promising building block in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who has potential to be a perennial all-star. And up until 2026, Sam Presti has collected potentially 17 first-round picks. So he'll have multiple chances in multiple drafts to select talented prospects, and based off of OKC's track record, I'd say they're pretty adept at finding and developing young talent. This season, though, will be about testing the potential of their current young core. It's a talented young bunch of Lou Dort, Pokusevski, Darius Bazley, and Theo Maledon. all with potential to improve, but which young players, if any at all, can be important pieces around Shai for OKC in the future?